Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for additional Acropolis number 3 Gauntlet Stage coverage. We're moving into Gauntlet Stage B, and while in the last Gauntlet Stage I neglected to cast any of the opening matches, today is a special day where we are going to be taking a look at one of the opening matches that I was told features excellence. We've got This Is Jimmy in the bottom right as our dim gray Terran. And we have Lucifirius as our jet black Zerg in the top left. This is Crisis Vector. And if I didn't know any better, I'd say Lucy is setting up for a Zorka's Shroud Rush, but that's just because he has a ton of gas. Instead, he's going for his pool. So Lucifirius is a longtime member of the No Frauds Club's Discord server and community overall. He's also one of our Reddit moderators. Yes, you heard that right. He does it for free. He's really good, I would say a very good... I'm trying to think of the right word here, because I think saying good homie doesn't really sound right. But he is a very good homie. He's a good homie to have, you know what I mean? He's a good friend, I think at this point safe to say. I've just known him for feels like 100 years. And he's already, switching over to Zerg. He usually plays Terran, but not this time. This time he's playing Zerg here. And, of course, this happens to be a matchup where both players are picking a very dark color set. But don't worry, I can tell the difference on the minimap. I hope you guys are kitted up here. It looks like Jimmy is... Okay, he's just floating money. I was going to say he might be setting up for a single stockade and then an expansion behind it, which would be a pretty interesting build order. I'm not so sure it would yield great results, but it's something to think about. And here we have Lucifirius going for a defensive Circuit in his mineral line. I think that was reactive, because again, he had so much Vespene that even after making his Larvosk, he still has enough for a Larvosk and then some. And I think that's just because of the Hurakan that he scouted. He's maybe a little bit concerned about the presence of Ahmed. But since it was a Hurakan first, with the Mavericks kind of streaming in single file, partially due to the fact that Jimmy did not add a stockade early on, right? He was floating a lot of money early, and he still kind of is right now. It means that the follow-up with the Mavericks and such is not necessarily going to be too big. Now, Lucy doesn't actually have any combat units, so this Larvosk should actually end up dying, but that Hurakan has taken a beating already, and Jimmy's now being a bit tame. I don't know if he's clicked on this to confirm. You can tell by the wireframe what it's turning into. If you don't see this wireframe, you're good to attack this indefinitely. And yet here we are, with, some more static defense coming. I don't really like this second Circuit. I guess if it's like an all-in on the location, it's actually helpful, but I think this should have just been another Larvosk. He had the gas for it. I guess maybe this one's going to be a Larvosk? Yes, okay. So, I think you could switch these two's places and it would be better, because at least then you'd have like this point to fight around, and if somehow that dies, you can fall back to this more defensive one. That Circuit still helps out versus Hurakans and such. What's the development in Jimmy's base? He went for a sieve instead of just harvesting from the geyser. He likes to do this. I don't know why. Did he just play StarCraft 1 a few times and then forget you can harvest directly from the gas? I don't know. But he's going for a fulcrum. So he's like, I must cap the sieve before I harvest any Vespene. Even though you can harvest the ridge and the gas directly, right? I mean, we see Lucy doing that to the geyser here, so no worries there. Also going for a Hydrith Den now. And he's got quad larva every 14 seconds. That's not anything to hoot at. That's a lot of unit production. Ministry on location. Jimmy is very safe from a counter push because it's only quads on the other side. It would take a long time for them to move out. But the count is definitely overwhelming now, especially with a lack of Hurakans on the front line. The quads will just tear those Mavericks up, temporarily using that cliff advantage, shooting down range with extra range when you're up a cliff level, and also getting a bit of an extra shot as a result. If there were more Hurakans here, it would have been a bit of a different story, but this is a lot of quads. In theory, Jimmy does have to start concerning himself with what's going to happen. He's going for a Palladium. If he can get, an anchor with some Mavericks in it, I think he's fine from a counter push. The things you do start to worry about, though, are the Zethra-cores. I think, honestly, I'd start to be a bit concerned about that even if I had a Phalanx out. I would definitely want a wall, start using unit positioning in this kind of situation. But those are just my thoughts looking at it right now. Lucifirius does seem to be going for that expansion. He's a little bit slower than Jimmy in that front. Of course, I'm not forgetting the map veto. I know I didn't talk about it, but I can tell you that our second map in this particular series is going to be Near Impact, so both of Jujik's offerings being played in the opening. I think Jujik might have been the admin for this set. It's hard to tell because every one of the admins kind of uses the the same stuff that I do, where you name yourself after the code for the match. AC3, GSB is Gauntlet Stage B, AC3 being Acropolis 3, of course, and then, you know, O1 is opener number 1 in this particular case. And so, yeah, definitely, it's cool to see that level. Like, you know, I can't quite tell. I think Smarty likes to put the player names in there, so that's what makes me think this is Jujic. And I think if I had to guess, Cannoli probably just hosts as Cannoli. I don't think he even makes a new profile. But shout out to Cannoli. He did do a couple of matches in this Acropolis cycle. And may still do a couple of matches in Gauntlet Stage C. Oh, I forgot, guys. Gauntlet Stage C. It's open. As of the time of recording this video, we have only 2 slots left. So by the time you listen to this, man, maybe there's no slots left. But check it out. Definitely going to be an interesting development to see who makes it in. And, yeah, just waiting on some more developments in this stage because there's a second Fulcrum being made. We got plenty of healing come out with the Clerics and the Shaman. And, of course, we do have some nice Mavericks there as well. So here is the Vornnath Pond. So this is what I was kind of curious about. Lucifirius is going to be going for the Vornnath, and he's going to be presumably making a couple of Vorvs with that. But he could also go for an air attack, right? We don't actually see any Watchdogs in this situation. Jimmy now remembers he can harvest from the Geyser, and he is putting a Cestus and an Anchor together. So this helps with the front line. A lot harder to make it through this area, right-click past it and go into the main or whatever, when you're kind of walling this off and making it so that you can really thin the herd, funnel the enemy units down into the, you know, unwanted positions where splash damage is disproportionately powerful. Also, I think one thing that really is perhaps a bit underrated about Cestus, it increases armor, specifically with the Phalanx. So some things it's not really going to matter because you have to be facing the target to get benefit from the armor. But with the Phalanx, there are a lot of situations where that splash damage would be pretty minimal and the armor buff reduces it even more. And that does happen for structures in particular, I think. So, you know, if you have like a bunch of anchors and you have a bunch of Phalanx, don't be surprised if your Phalanx stay alive. Now, don't ask me why we see a bunch of Jimmy's units over here. I think maybe this is worry about some kind of air push, but he doesn't want to make any Watchdogs or any even Madrigals. So I'm not really sure. Like, the Hurricanes have no business being here because they can't help out. Maybe anti-drop or something. But even still, I think if they're dropping, it's pretty easy to tell. The only area that Jimmy does not have covered is the top right of his main. Now he's starting some anti-air defenses. Starpad nearly complete as well. You can see the production tab, you know, definitely favoring Jimmy in terms of diversity here. We have a lot of static defense coming up at the natural, and a whole flock of Nathracors. 16 of them have been dispatched. Bottom left, and we do have another 6 or so in the natural waiting to be used. Oh, 14 more coming. A lot of S being invested into this, and it looks like 12 o'clock will be the next expansion that Lucifirius goes for. So this is interesting. I feel like what Lucifirius is going to be setting up for here, especially as he reinforces that bottom left flock, is he's trying to do a timing attack with the multi-prong, right? He's going to go after this with a bunch of Nathracors inside the main base or what have you, and then he's going to come down swinging with the Zeths and the Hydras. You know what? I'm starting to remember exactly what happened in this series. Insofar as, like, I'm starting to remember the admin here. I believe Smarty Cakes relieved the admin for this series in the second round. So the second map is a different admin than the first. We'll check on that anyway. That's just trivia as the attack is coming in. The Nathracors diving. Remember, there's Cyclops over here, so a lot of those Nathracors could explode at a moment's notice, but right now, it's the Phalanx on the high ground that's helping out. There is another flock of Nathracors coming in, though. That could be massive. Oh, Cyprian shots galore as well, penetrating so many of the Nathracors. And while a lot of Mavericks, and Masons for that matter, went down, the worker count definitely favoring Lucy. There's a potential timing attack here, but here comes a whole nother flock of Nathracors. They're going to pick this Watchdog. What do we have as a reaction? Already a Madrigal out. Feels like there's less of an opportunity here for Lucifirius to do much. Oh, he eviscerated that. Poor Anseal, though. Very nice. One thing you got to watch out here with the Cyclops is, are you going to do too much friendly fire damage? Looks like a couple of Masons are going to go down because of a bit of poor control there from Jimmy. But there you go. No further casualties. It looks like, you know, even 3 more Masons going down there does kind of sting. And, of course, one thing that players have to remember is that their mineral fields will deplete eventually in the main base, so it's always good to saturate those naturals a bit earlier. Now we've got Tier 2 coming for Lucifirius. He's got his Khazitra set up. It feels like his push, you know, to actually push him here. I mean, you can attack this 12 o'clock base 6 ways from Sunday. It's not defended. It's not even mining right now, but This ground army, it would have to set up a very tactical, prolonged siege in front of Lucifirius' natural. I don't know if Jimmy recognizes this kind of map state, though. This is something that I think a lot of players kind of will, as soon as they start losing a little bit of ground to an attack from somebody else, they will just kind of generally start to falter and lose, like generically kind of. Like it's just almost a given that that's what's going to happen, and they slowly bleed out. If this sounds like it applies to your game plan, let me know in the comment section, because I feel like this is a common thing. Like you hold an attack, you need to find some kind of proactive measure. You need to be able to maybe scout to see if there's another attack incoming, and if so, you can prepare for defense. But you can also try to scout and figure out, okay, can I like send out a harassment squad? You know, can I take all these Hurricanes that aren't very useful in that last fight and kind of pinch them off and maybe go around and try to attack this 12 o'clock? You need to scout to see if that 12 o'clock is even there. And even if you just send the Hurricane squad, that's still a step up, because you confirm that there is or isn't a 12 o'clock to attack. And if there is, and it's not defended, maybe Ahmed kills the base or kills a bunch of workers, right? So there's things you can do in this situation without abandoning your entire main base, if you're worried about that. Jimmy is moving out without any scouting, and that, I think, is a bit of a whiff, because you absolutely can make things happen here as Jimmy in this position without, you know, exposing yourself to a total attack. However, it is still the right move for him to move across the map. He just doesn't know it's the right move. So I'm still trying to, like, temper, you know, in this particular game, yes, move across the map, try to set up for a flank, try to set up for a position here where you can get an entrenched spot close to Lucifirius' bases and start pressuring him before his tier 2 comes in, because he is in a point of transition where his army does not match the level of strength that Jimmy's army has. I'm going to pull him forward a little bit here. The siege up needs to be much closer. Jimmy basically has to kind of leapfrog forward here. He's also making some Valkyries to help deal with all those Nathracors, which helps as well, since the Madrigal can then deploy and deal with some of the other targets. We got Cyprians in here as well. Oh yeah, that should be more than enough. But he does need to wait for those Phalanxes. He cannot fight away from the Phalanxes, or this backline of Hydras is just going to get too much damage dealt to everything else. The Shaman's trying to keep things alive, but those Hydras are spread very well versus everything except for Phalanx shots, and we just don't have the range for them. The leapfrogging was not quick enough. He needs to be able to leverage the exceedingly high range and splash radius, and of course impact damage of those Phalanxes in order to actually break the Hydras. He is going to break him, but the reinforcement wave is going to kill him. Almost assuredly, right? Like, oh, I guess he has a decent number of Phalanxes still. One Madrigal and a couple of Cyprians here, but that Madrigal is going to go kaput pretty soon. Here's the Valkyrie to help out. Oh, we love the Valkyrie. It's so beautiful. But now there's a flood of Zethacors to try to clear this position cost efficiently for Lucifirius while he banks up his tier 2 tech. And this is kind of what I mean. If you get those Cyprians and Goliaths and everything else that was kind of the meat and potatoes of the army that could still move around while the Phalanxes did their business, if those were still alive to some degree, you could start attacking this 12 o'clock. You could start setting up a containment maybe. You'd have to choose one or the other. I don't think you'd have both. But, you know, there's these side bases taken now by Lucy. And sure, they're not mining yet, but they're an investment into the future. Meanwhile, we don't have actually that much here for Jimmy. He's doesn't have his Atlas coming, and he is floating a lot of money. So, you know, this is a situation where you drop a couple extra production structures, or you start thinking about your tier 2 and maybe pull back and try to play defensively. He has no idea that these other bases are here, but he could definitely snipe that with the army that he's got. At least keep him on 3 base while you try to set your own third up. 22 Iziracors are about to pop, and he's making Tethzoracors, which we love. He's also making a whole boatload of Lyrilisks, and this feels like, I mean, obviously this squad, even with the reinforcements coming, it's not going to be nearly enough. Jimmy looks like he is moments away from being swatted out. Now, he does have an Atlas coming, but I feel like Lucy would really have to bungle this from this position. Jimmy had one scary attack timing, and he took a little bit too long to get out of his base following the riposte of the strike that wounded his economy so much. I guess another way to think about it is, if you're in this situation and you don't have that much economy after losing to a lot of, you know, drops or air attacks or whatever, and you've also held against a frontal attack. You know, the timing attack didn't kill Jimmy. Lucy still had to deal with a significant army, right? And here we are in a situation where it feels like Jimmy needs to actually post up with his set of, you know, all of the stuff that he's got, really. He needs to have all hands on deck. He's invested money into the Cestus and into all that stuff. He can't take this fight in the open ground. He needs to fall back and play around his defenses. But that would give up all the agency of the map, right? It's as soon as he lost that economic lead, that economic edge, really, or even parity on the economy, because of all of the Masons that were killed by Naths, he needed to go and do a counterpunch. And if you think about it, all he did was whittle down the army. Zerg is fine with that because they don't have to replace Droleths. They can just spend all of their larvae on military. So what you want to be able to do is take the level of strength that you have, militarily speaking, and use it to regain, level the playing field economically, killing bases, killing workers, something like that. Now 32 Mutalisks are inbound to the bottom left, and it looks like Lucifirius will be setting up a very similar play to what happened before. Now there is still a risk here, is if those phalanxes get up and stay up. They are deploying, so the next salvo of shots is going to be real big. Those Amaxilisks are not in a big enough number to snipe down individual targets, especially those tanky Valkyries. It's going to take a little bit too long. The Mutas interrupting reinforcements is a smart idea, especially that it also is going to attack the natural and potentially just cripple the economy yet again. And again, Lucy is fine just using reinforcements to flood down this position. He's even gotten more Mutas, 16 more Mutas. That's the level of his economy. Shit GG. Jimmy is not pleased with this, and he will be down his opponent's map pick. Or no, this was Jimmy's map pick. So Lucifirius taking us to near impact for his one, and we will have to see what happens next. Jimmy just taking a look at some of the other unit interactions here at the very end, and unfortunately not getting very far. And that will be it. That is a wrap. And yeah, all well, that ends well for Lucifirius. He's up 1-0. Let's see what happens in map number 2, as Jimmy definitely wants to get the upper hand. At least take us to a third map, defend his honor. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming back into things, and there it is. Smarty Cakes is here as our match admin. I knew he would leave somebody here for this. So, yeah, Lucifirius in the top left, once again, our jet black Zerg player, and this is Jimmy in the bottom right, once again, as our dim gray Terran player, going for that stockade. So we instantly see that it will be bio once again. Maybe something more rush-oriented from Jimmy. I mean, he technically did a bit of a rush, but it felt like maybe he wasn't warmed up yet because he had all those extra minerals in the early game. We kind of glossed over that. I was more interested in talking about how the response to going down in economy and how it's not over just because of that, but it will be over if you allow yourself to get kind of strangled from that position, right? So it does feel like that is something that Jimmy and a lot of other players, admittedly, do have a little bit of weakness to their play. So, by the way, this match is between seed number 8, seed number 9 of the tournament, so of this stage of the tournament anyway. Very tight match. It was hard to call who's going to be better than the other. Lucy seems to have a narrow understanding, at least in terms of his game theory. He got ahead. We don't know what Lucy plays like when he goes behind, so if Jimmy can maybe upset the apple cart in that respect, that could be pretty good. And, yeah, we have a little bit of a pick ban here to talk a little bit about. Here, as you see, Check Stealer was banned, Decapitation was banned, getting rid of some of those 4 spawn maps. Obviously, Crisis Vector, and then Near Impact selected by Jimmy and then Lucy. Then we had Radium banned. I wonder why. Mass Destruction vetoed, so Lucy apparently not interested in those 4 spawners either. And then Kingwa Valley selected by Jimmy as our decider. There's, of course, a bunch of other maps that were available, like Brainstorm, but not too many people picking that one. So we do have a Maverick stemming across the map, and this is before the pool is, even halfway done. So this should definitely get some damage. Let us see. We have these stockades coming. We have a borrowed worker there, okay. Doesn't want to scout right now. Maybe already did. I did have the veto up, so I didn't actually see what might have happened with that. Already bet down to a less than half HP on this Maverick, though. Got to watch out. The workers might start getting angry at you, and should be getting angry, but actually instead... Oh no, Lucy, you're losing a lot of HP on your workers. 2 of them lost all of their HP. I can't believe that. Well, 1 set of Riller Rokors should be able to deal with this, and there is no actual follow-up here. So, oh, I looked away and he died. Unfortunate. Didn't even capture his moment of death. But he didn't get a 3rd kill, so that's what's really important. There is still a circuit that was forced out of that, so that's kind of like killing 3 workers. You had to use the worker for that. By the way, a nifty little thing about Cosmonarchy Zerg is... when you blow up the structure, it turns back into a worker, as long as it's not actively mutating at the time, which I think is a neat little quirk of it. If you're taking, say you attack the circuit, it regresses into the Kagrant, the creep colony equivalent, and then if that's actively trying to turn into something like static defense and it dies, it won't turn back into the worker. But if it's just sitting there, then you have to kind of cancel it on the last second. Then you get your worker back. That's a really neat little aspect. So in theory, if Lucy actually wanted to turn this into a Larvosk, he could just kill the circuit. If he wanted to get back his worker entirely, he could kill it all the way. I don't think we're going to get into situations where that's actually good too often, but oh my god. He is going for the proxy hatch, ladies and gentlemen. Euthermal would be proud. Very, very proud. So we have Quaz, we have a pair of Zeths, so this attack should be... Actually, this attack might be a little bit tight. It's a good thing he didn't kill that Circuit. I think without the Circuit, this would be almost hopeless. I think Jimmy would easily overpower him. He does have triple stockade, and he's expanding a bit faster than last game, I would say. Although that's just entirely a vibe. I don't actually know if that's true or not. By the way, these Rilla Road cores, you cannot use them off the K grid. They will eventually die. Now, stemming up the ramp, this is the time to shine for Jimmy. He's pushed back a lot of the Quaz, and he wants to see if he can use those Hurricans to great effect, but he has lost a man already, a Maverick to be specific, and he's lost a lot of HP on his Hurricane, no healing yet. Now, we've got Drolets hatching at the third base for Jimmy, because this is Lucifirius' proxy hatch. He's expanded. That's his natural expansion, apparently. Mesk would smile upon this game, that's for sure. Already have some very interesting competition going on here. We've got more static defense coming, a second Circuit, and extra K-Grints, which I assume this one's a Larvosk. I don't know what that one will be. I actually wouldn't hate spreading K-Grit towards the ramp, because then you can actually get the Rilla Rokors in on the fight. When they die, they debuff the attack speed and armor of enemy targets, which is especially impactful for the Hurricane, I think. The attack speed, not so much, but obviously the fact that it has one less armor means that your Quaz are going to do quite well there. So that's a pretty big deal, in my opinion. They basically go down to, they have one armor pen, so the Hurricane ceases to reduce any damage dealt by the Quaz. So in defensive moments like that, it can be very useful. Or, of course, if you go the Zorka Shroud and you build a Zor Eusthaleth, then you just kind of passively spawn the Rilla Road cores, right? So it's all good there. So we do have the Vestry coming up here for the Stockade, and that means that we will see some healing, a fourth Stockade coming. I would love to see a little bit more from Jimmy in the tech department, either going for drops so he can maybe bypass some of the static defense or other such things. What is developing here at this place? He's actually made Larvosks and only one pair of Quaz. He's making just workers so far down in this position and actually mining from it. So it's not there as purely a stronghold. He's invested a lot of resources into this. If this backfires, if this gets scouted, it is over for Lucy, it feels like. So still very good odds here for Jimmy. Problem is he's not investing into anything that will actually break the circuits. This is where I was kind of thinking about, like, if you go for ant seals, you can actually stim underneath the ant seals and just pick off the circuits themselves. I guess with enough of this combat, if you actually had just these two unit types and you had them in enough quantity, you would absolutely break this position. So maybe I shouldn't be so quick to say that he hasn't invested in anything that will break it. But he is grabbing a Fulcrum and a second Vestry. That's interesting. I think you probably don't make too many Shamans in this situation. If you go second Vestry, you can make a lot of Clerics and then just kind of use that. But we'll have to see if that ends up working out well or not. There's no way you only have one base. Well, how right you are. Lucifirius drops him with a question mark. Typing during tournament matches totally allowed, by the way. Just don't be an asshole, really. That's all. I had to say that. I have to put the Shambler clause in there. You know, if you're typing whack stuff, then maybe the hammer comes down. But generally speaking, stuff like what Jimmy just did and what Lucy replied with are totally fair game, totally fine, totally optional. So we do indeed have the. And yet another Larvosk here. He's going to have 5 larvae per 14 seconds at this base, and then 3 down here at the little outpost that he's got. What is that going to result in, I wonder? I would, you know, if I'm in this game, I'm just like creeping the Kagra out with a bunch of circuits and stuff. That's what I'm doing. Here comes some Vorvacors. Unlikely to be able to get out of his own choke point here, and Jimmy is going to start to commit onto this. He shreds the front line immediately. There's a whole boatload of Quaz still in play, but there's another stim. And the Shaman trying to deploy to heal all of the Mavericks. It's going to work out wonderfully, but here comes the counter stab. And I don't know if there's anything over here. He's made a bunch of Nathicors, but they're busy attacking Cyprians, and that will almost never work, but it hasn't given him enough time. Oh no, the Cyclops doing friendly fire. The Quaz tearing him apart. The production structure is not actually turning, and instead Jimmy wants to try to focus the attention onto the actual main base of Lucy. This could result in a very interesting base trade, but I think with Hurricanes out, Jimmy can hold. Let's see if he can break him over here. This is the next really big bit of high drama. Another round of massive amounts of Quaz, but maybe he can't hold. He needs to break him here, and even then, remember that base in the bottom left still counts for elimination purposes. We've got loads of K-Grids coming down. Last-ditch effort for Lucifirius to hold on to his main base. Those Mavericks are not stimmed, they're not in the fight. The Mason's coming out! I knew it, Jimmy says, as he waits for those stockades to keep pumping. He desperately hopes he can break him in this position. He can still fight. There's the stim that we need. And now, Rillarocors and Zethrakors, everything coming out here. But these 3 circuits in the back are going to finish. And he's adding more K-Grids. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. The Ministry is lifting off. Absolute scenes here as the stockades are overwhelmed by quas. But look, the bio getting things done. I don't know if it's enough, though. It doesn't feel like it's enough. He's got all of this stuff killed, but I don't think it matters. He's trying to fight all of those circuits. I don't think it's going to make a difference. He's waypointed all of his Masons up towards the top left, funnily enough. If he expands to that guy's third, that would just add even more goofiness. All of the static defense remorphing. The workers not at all bothered by this. And none of the production was lifted. Jimmy, hoisted by his own petard, refusing to leave. Refusing to use his liftoff cornerstone. Now the Masons arrive just in time, and oh man, GG's. Jimmy, he went from shit to fuck at the end of the game. He's getting all of the expletives out, but at the end of the day, he was not able to clutch out the dub. Wow. Well, that was a non-standard game, and you know, I really actually want to double click on what Jimmy said when he said there's no way you only have one base. He said that. He was thinking that. That's a really good thought to have in that situation. Because you see what your opponent has, and you know, roughly speaking, what other Zergs can have at this time, and you think that's way less than what they should have. I might not be able to break that with my current army, but that's definitely less than they should have. He was suspicious, but he was incurious. He did not decide to move around the map and scout. And it's rare to scout your third base and see those kinds of shenanigans, but I mentioned earlier, if he comes down there with the hammer, if he just decides to clear that base, he's so far ahead all of a sudden, right? And I think this game goes to this particular series goes to a decider on Kingwa Valley, and who knows what happens then. So I don't want Jimmy to feel too down on himself, as he often does after a loss. It was really, you know, there was room for growth in both of those maps. Hopefully the commentary and the match coverage helps him out and helps other players who are in similar situations oftentimes. Is if you feel like your opponent should have more, scout. If you feel like your opponent, you know, is, just defeated a bunch of your economy, don't sit there idly. Scout to see what kind of things you can learn about the map state and respond in kind. Harass them at weak points, attack them if you think your army is better because you held off their big force, and see what you can do to try to even the odds, because now you're playing from behind. You must equalize. So there you have it. A little bit of advice for all players. And Lucy, there's a couple of things in there that, of course, you could do better yourself. I'm sure you noticed them anyway. Hope to see some more matches in the future. Nonetheless, we will move on to casting some of the upper match series to see what all we can find between, basically the other players of the set that are going to be doing zany things. If, of course, I just decree it so, I will cast some matches that are not the upper matches and are not the qualification series. But we'll see. We will see. Maybe you'll see Lucy again later. GG's, and we'll be back soon for more Cosmonarchy.